My friends, welcome to the 2024 TGI Fantasy Postseason Awards Show. It has been another successful season, and we are here to commemorate that with awards and a few laughs. So I encourage you to grab a beverage. I'm drinking Michelob Ultra this year because I have to drive back to Iowa City later. Um, and sit back and enjoy. Maybe get cozy if you want. I'm your Master of Ceremonies and Commissioner, Spencer Jones. This year, our Deputy Commissioner once again was Cleo Weston. A huge shout out to her for helping me run the league all these years, especially this year. Never gets old with that duo. Um, and our casting vote, once again, reprising his role was Alex Merritt. We unfortunately did not have to use his input this year, but it was still nice knowing that he was there and that we could turn to him if we needed to. So we're going to get right into it. Our first award was Owner of the Year. This is the big one. This is what you want to win in the postseason awards. This means that you put in a successful season that the rest of the owners of the league admired, and you made very good GM moves or you had a strong team. Either way, this is a very, very prestigious award. Our first nominee of these six playoff teams that made it was Alex Russell. He went 10-4, got his second straight first round bye. That's never been done before. No one else has two. And he also went on an 8-game win streak that only ended because he ran into AK in the Collusion Bowl in week 14 that he could have kept going and won if he so chose. But yeah, a very, very strong performance from Alex this year. Ryan Williams was our next nominee. He had his fifth straight playoff season. He has a 100% rate of making the playoffs. Very, very impressive. Doesn't matter how you do it, whether some years are high and some are low. He has managed to do it every single year. Congratulations to him. And this was his first year being in the top four for scoring in the regular season, being second overall, 21 points behind Jackson, if I am correct. So a very, very strong year for Ryan that we haven't seen from him before. And he definitely outplayed his 8-6 record, but congratulations to him. Landon Rupp started 0-3, finished 8-6, went 8-3 down the stretch. Very similar to his rookie season last year, he became hot down the stretch with a very, very volatile team that would either score high or could go very low, and we're about to see that again this year. But yeah, he battled his way into the playoffs and had a very, very solid midseason. And to that, I congratulate him. Cleo Weston had a very, very rough start, but she ended up making her first playoffs since 2022 after a very, very down 2023 year that saw her go 6-8. Yeah, she was down at the bottom of the points for most of the year, but what that doesn't tell you is that she had a lot of young talent on her team that really, really paid off with quite a few boomer bust moves. Our last nominee is Henry Gonzalez. Once again, just doing what he does. He goes out and wins. I think he went 9-5 this year. Once again, making the playoffs with that little slump in 2022, he would have been in every single year. Just a strong performance from the man himself. All he does is go out and win. So that can't be understated. But our winner, by a pretty big margin, was Jackson Grant. 11-3, excellent GMing on the year. He had some very, very solid moves and picked up a very, very important trade for him at the deadline, and picked up Jawan Jennings when that wide receiver core went down for San Francisco. That really, really propelled him throughout the later part of the season. To me, there was really no doubt about him winning this. He spent 10 weeks in the regular season at the top of the standings, including 2 in the playoffs, and he's on pace as of right now to win that championship game. This looks like a very, very successful season that he can be proud of. Our next award is the Comeback Owner of the Year, starring Eric Berry. This is an award that really goes to show an owner that has improved from year to year, or maybe improved throughout the year, or just put in the work to get back to the top. Our first nominee is Andreas Colette. He turned around after back-to-back playoff misses, brutal years that really, really don't go to show his ball knowledge, especially as a fantasy owner. But this year he was able to put it together. He looked primed for the playoffs late into the season. Unfortunately, couldn't put it together. However, he was dealing with a pretty measured team. It wouldn't really deviate too far. So he was consistent when it mattered. He started 0-3, finished 7-7. Um, Overall, a very solid year, and if he can continue that momentum, he will be a pretty big force next year. Um, Cleo Weston, like I said, missed the playoffs in 2022, makes it in 2023, used some excellent GM moves to get there after just a rough season last year where it seemed like she couldn't get ahead of the fold. Um, but overall, a very solid year this year, good improvement, a lot of young players that paid off. Um, Ryan Williams is our next nominee. Um, Now you may be asking why is he on here? He's made the playoffs 5 straight times. Well, if you remember last year, he had a lot of fraud allegations, being I think second to last in points scored, and he's known for turning low-scoring seasons into winning years. But this year, he responded to those fraud allegations with just a fantastic 2024 season, being 21 points off of Jackson. I think goes unnoticed in the league. Jackson, you think of as the class of the league right now, and Ryan was 21 points behind. So he was definitely up there any given week. He was a tough team to play. So congratulations to Ryan. However, our winner is Jackson Grant. He's going to take home both of these awards. Like I said, finally a season to be proud of. Years of pain have kind of put him here. He made the playoffs back in 2022, I believe, where he was 5-9, but had the most points. The one year that we did that before we changed the playoff structure. But yeah, every year he's improved, and this year it finally paid off. He kind of sold his soul to the devil to try and get this championship. So we will see at the end of the week where that puts him. But yeah, Jackson has put in just a great performance this year. As you can see, so do the league mates agree. So yeah, congratulations. Next, we have Master Tank Artist. This is one of my favorite awards every year. This is where you see those owners that find more and new, unique ways to lose any given year than anyone else. And we have quite a few similar nominees to last year. We're going to start with Mitch Walsmith, who looked like he had a successful draft through 3 weeks of the season, but couldn't escape the injury bug. Everything he touched dies pretty much. Players would go down like crazy. He just couldn't recover. But he also made some questionable GM moves or lack thereof. The lesson that I took away from this year was that we should always question Mitch's GM moves, even if they look good. Go ahead and put some skepticism on it because it just never works out, and the common denominator is Mitch himself. So I think we need to start putting more scrutiny under his watchful eye for when he makes moves, because it's rough every single time you go and see it. Our next nominee is Alex Kanasag, who openly tanked with Lamar on his roster, or at least jokingly openly tanked. But it started back in like week 6. He showed out when it mattered for the MacGuffin, and it looks increasingly like he's going to keep that through this week, and he's going to be our MacGuffin champion more than likely. Yeah, so take that as you will. He started winning when it mattered for his agenda. Yeah, our next nominee is going to be Cam Wheeler. He found ways to regularly lose, scoring 130 points. It happens to someone each year. Unfortunately, it was him. But he's really turning into the league anti-hero at this point. He just can't get it right no matter how hard he tries, how much effort he puts in. I really hope to see him push for it next year, and I think it'll break through eventually. But unfortunately, he was the scoring squatter this year. Just couldn't get away with it. Eddie Morlock Hobson, this year he was proof that not changing and failing to adapt is indeed a losing strategy. And he is in significant danger right now of going back-to-back for last place finishes. He made a giant GM blunder this week that might cost him the Ziggy. So we're gonna see how that turns out, but Eddie is one of our nominees. Next up is myself, Spencer Jones. This year I proved to be a living embodiment of changing too much and over adapting. It's also a losing strategy. Um, I made several questionable GM moves this year that didn't pay off, and at the deadline, I ended up trading my roster to tank and improve my draft stock, and then I continued winning. So I guess I didn't get the memo there. Yeah, I should really probably start learning from Mitch and AK about how to do this because I clearly just can't do it well. Logan Weston is our final nominee. We really got to start studying this Logan Weston fall off because it baffles my mind every single season. This is his second straight season ending on a giant losing streak in the regular season. Last year, he won the league. This year, it just continued getting rough for him. 7-game losing streak in the regular season, continued 2 games into the playoffs. It looks like he's finally going to snap that this week against me. But 9 games to end the year losing is, it's a brutal stretch, my friend. So that ended up Logan getting on the list here. But our winner, going back to back, is Ziggy Page for back-to-back Master Tank Artist Awards. He looked rough all year. He just could never get his foot into the door. He beat the 1-5 allegations, as he said. That's a quote from him. But other than that, it just couldn't get better for Ziggy this year. After having a phenomenal rookie season, having back-to-back years like this, I think isn't fully representative of him as a manager. So we'll see going into next year. Last year, I did dub him the tank commander of the league. I think I'm going to have to go ahead and promote him to general, though, just for back-to-back stank performances. It's just not a good look for his stock. So, yeah, we're going to move on to the most valuable player. I'm going to take a drink, and I'll give you guys some history on this award. If my picture comes back up, there it is. Good old Kurt Warner. So, some history. The past 3 years, we had Christian McCaffrey, Mitchell Schedule, if you remember that. Definitely turned a lot of heads. And Cooper Kupp in 2021 with his Triple Crown year. This year, our first nominee is... what is going on here? Our first nominee is Brock Bowers, who was tight end 1 on the year for Alex Russell. Broke several records as a rookie. And was a heavy contributor to Alex's 8-game win streak that really, really put him into the front. And you could see him slowly creep up. He started the year 2-3, and over time would slide up the rankings, and all of a sudden he was at the top with Jackson. Next is Joe Burrow, just doing Joe Burrow things. He was QB3 on the year for Ryan's squad. He had a pretty slow start. But really, really turned into reliable big points on the stretch. I think he scored over 30 points in 6 of the last 9 weeks, and was a huge contributor to Ryan's first ever top 4 scoring year. Jahmyr Gibbs, running back 3 for Henry's squad. He was really Henry's only reliable running back on the year. He kind of had a revolving door back there. Also, I believe kept Ezekiel Elliott on his bench all year, but yeah, Jahmyr Gibbs was a solid draft pickup for him, and really put on display what he can do. Jamar Chase was wide receiver 1 for Logan. He would either go for 10 points or 45 points every year or every week. And I always got scared whenever I'd see Jamar Chase coming up on my radar for who I was gonna have to play next, and I believe he went for 40 points for me against Landon. I don't know what the hell is going on here, but we're gonna continue. For those asking where their player is, like who's this player, where's he at? I'm gonna put out a random example. We'll go with Lamar Jackson for AK's squad. My response is try winning, because you went 6-8 and Lamar scored 28.5 points a week. That just shouldn't happen. That's pretty horrendous. So let's start with point A of winning and get to point B of MVP voting. But our winner is Saquon Barkley for Jackson Grant. Whenever it shows up here, this is giving me tons of troubles here. But yeah, running back 1 on the year. Really made a huge impact, and he was pretty damn reliable all year for Jackson. all that being said, that Monday night football game from week 2 is going to haunt me forever. I'm never going to get over that loss. But yeah, back-to-back running backs taking this award. So very well done. Very solid season from Saquon and Jackson. Next up, our Bust of the Year, the Johnny Sins Bust of the Year. This is traditionally a running back award. The last 3 winners have been running backs, being Austin Eckler, Jonathan Taylor, and Christian McCaffrey back in 2021. I'm not going to sugarcoat this one because this one wasn't really close. I will go over quickly the nominees. Isaiah Pacheco, Puka Nacua, and Chris Olave missed a lot of the season due to injury and were drafted pretty high and had high expectations. Pat Mahomes, slow start on the year, really finished strong. Though when I put this out, I think he was QB 16 or 17, and now I think he's in the top 10. Since acquiring Hopkins, he's thrown 19 touchdowns and only 2 picks. He looks really back to form. But he was a nominee for how awful he looked in the beginning part of the year, and Ziggy continued to start him. Anthony Richardson, 5th round pick by Cleo, spent over half the year in free agency before being picked up and not playing by Andreas. For a running quarterback, you would think that Anthony Richardson would have been able to put it together somewhat more and score a little more, but overall, extremely disappointing. And finally, Sam Laporta, who almost was worse than a player that got injured and you could forget about, because he played that role this year of that player that gave you hope, and you had to play him every week. And poor Andreas, I feel like, has to deal with a player like this every year where you can't cut him because it's a what if. So Sam Laporta filled that role this year. Our winner, unanimously, I believe our first unanimous winner, is a 2-time winner now, Christian McCaffrey, who played 1 game, I believe, all year for Mitch. Maybe he didn't even play at all. I don't even remember, in all honesty. But yeah, for being picked number 1, running back 68, and the award's staying in the running back fraternity at this point. So be careful with who you're drafting, because every year it's going to go to someone, and you have a high chance of being that person. So keep that in mind. Next up is our sleeper pick of the year, our Joe Biden sleeper of the year. First off is Joe Mixon, who was running back 8, drafted in round 3 by Cleo. He had a few big weeks where he would put up 30 plus, but other than that was pretty below average, especially down the stretch. I believe he had 4 of his last 5 games he scored less than 10 points. So yeah, that's disappointing. However, he put in those performances that would make you go, what if? Terry McLaurin, wide receiver 5 on the year, once again drafted by me, and Andreas picked up. He was drafted in the 5th round, cut from my roster, and I'm gonna regret that. Never hear the end of that from Eros, that's for sure, because he balled out for Andreas the rest of the year, and was a huge proponent for that playoff push that Andreas was making in the middle of the season. Jaden Reed was wide receiver 12 when I put this out. I think he's like wide receiver 18 now. He fell off. He was drafted in the 7th round, though, so that return on investment was pretty good for Cleo. Similar to Mixon, though, he had some big performances, but was pretty shut down in some games. That wide receiver core in Green Bay is a carousel anyways, so it's very difficult to know where your player stands. Brock Bowers makes another appearance on this nominee list, tight end 1 for A-Russ. There's not much more to be said. He was a very, very solid pickup, drafted in the 7th round. Tight end 1 is very impressive, though, in scoring, especially ahead of Kelsey and Kittle. Darnell Mooney, who, if you asked me about him, I would have thought he was wide receiver like 45. He was wide receiver 15 on the year. Drafted in the 11th round by Andreas, one of the highest ROIs of any of the players in the draft. Shockingly relevant this year, even when Kirk went sicko mode on throwing interceptions. He just kept putting in points performances and was just a very, very solid and reliable option for Andreas. However, our winner was Jaden Daniels, and I'm going to be honest, this one shocked me a bit by his total vote share. I wasn't expecting him to kind of run away with this award. He was QB6, drafted in the 9th round. That makes 3 straight quarterbacks that have won this award, Brock Purdy and Tua before him. He really picked up a lot of the slack for Henry when Dak went down, and kind of was a season saver. So Jaden Daniels going to be our sleeper pick of the year as a rookie as well. So very, very solid year from him. Next up is our Rookie Player of the Year. This is returning after a year hiatus. We did not do it last year, but we're bringing it back. Our first nominee is Malik Neighbors, who was wide receiver 19 going into this week, and then he just dropped 35 points on ARS, so he's probably up in that stock. From Jackson, this is a player I drafted, traded to him. Struggled with injuries throughout part of the year, nagging hamstring, but being dealt to Jackson at the deadline really put in some key performances down the stretch, and he looked pretty legit whilst doing it, even with the injury numbers. So he's going to be probably a very, very solid pickup next year, potential first round pick. So that's our first nominee. Next is Bo Nix, who's QB9 for Cleo. Fantastic pickup for Cleo. Bo Nix was sitting in free agency, and Cleo had just dumped Anthony Richardson, and he continued to put in strong performances to get Cleo near the playoffs. Put Bo Nix right there with all the other rookies because he just performed when it mattered. He had some very, very big performances, a lot of multi-touchdown games. Next up is Bucky Irving, who I low-key forgot about. He was running back 17 for Cam. He came out of kind of nowhere. I think everyone expected Rachaad White to be that bell cow for Tampa, but he turned into a very solid running back option. Kind of faded into irrelevance a bit there, but yeah, overall, Bucky Irving, very solid year. And even though he won Sleeper Pick of the Year, Jaden Daniels is not going to win this. He's going to put in a very high vote share, though. He won the Sleeper of the Year on that draft stock. He falls short for Rookie of the Year for Henry. Still a very good year, but he falls short to Brock Bowers, who I believe third time he's showing up on this list, maybe fourth. Finally gets that award. He's balding like he's 35. I don't know where the picture is. Playing like it's 25, but overall an extremely successful rookie player for Alex. He's gonna be a very big pickup next year. I'm sure of it because on that terrible Raiders team he was still tight end one. So next we have Free Agent of the Year. This is an award that is returning after a 2-year hiatus, the last being done in 2021 when Cordell Patterson won it. Our nominees, Tucker Kraft, tight end 6 for me. I picked him up middle of the year. He got no votes. He's number 1 in my heart, though, because I had no one at tight end. I think I was playing Tyler Conklin or someone from the Jets. I don't even know if that's a real player. He was a TD merchant, but we love to see that for tight ends. Free agent pickup of the year next is Bo Nix. Like I was just talking about, very solid pickup for Cleo. Chase Brown, running back 11 for Henry. This is yet another player that I dropped from my drafted roster. Another one that I regret, but he took the reins from Moss when Moss got injured and just continued to run that ball down the opposing team's throats and just put in great performances for Landon, who had Jamar Chase as well. So that was a pretty good duo there for him. Cade Otton, tight end 8 for Jackson. He slowed down late in the year, but lit the league on fire at the start. Bonus points to him for being the Otton Picker's namesake, though. And Terry McLaurin, once again, is on here. Wide receiver 5 for Andreas. The only note I have down, because I've talked about him twice now, is pain. That's how I feel. Our winner was Baker Mayfield, QB5 for Logan. Went on to have his best season of his career with 35 plus TDs. I think he had 42 now. My dogs are going berserk upstairs. He was a top 3 quarterback for 12 weeks of the year, and he's a very, very solid option. Unfortunately, he's going to be best known for Logan's 9-game losing streak, so this award kind of goes with a grain of salt. We're going to move on. My dogs continued yapping for 5 more minutes. So, team name of the year is next. I'm going to give you some history because these give me some laughs. 2021 was Kareem Pie by Eddie. 2022 was Matt Aray's A House Party by AK. And 2023 was Amon Ra Dogging It by Jackson. This usually has the most nominees. So there's quite a few this year. We have Otton Pickers, Chubb for Jones, Feeling Up My Cousins, which was Ryan's introduction to using team names. um, Dicker Than Ditcher, Slobbin with Diamonds, and Run CMC, which I've been told to tell Mitch is basic. Our winner was First Down Syndrome by Cam. Highest. This is the highest vote share I believe any team name of the year has gotten since 2021, with 31% right there, as you can see. Um, the votes weren't as spread as they were in years past, so a lot of these names very clearly a league above the others. Next up is luckiest owner. This goes to an owner that says "fuck you" the most to the fantasy gods and just puts themselves into positions that they really shouldn't be in, um, uh, and are often perceived as lucky by the rest of the owners in the league. First up is Alex Russell. Went on an 8-game win streak down the stretch in the season. Got his second first round bye. Never been done before. But a lot of those wins in that win streak were scraped by. They weren't really blowouts. And a big contributor to that was that A-Russ had one of the highest rates of opponents' players getting injured in the league, meaning that either the week that he would play someone or the week before, that opponent's players would get injured and they'd have to go on the waiver wire. One of the highest in the league, I think, second only to Henry. But 8 wins, still very impressive. I've never done that. Most of you watching at home have never done that, so can't even hate on it. 8 wins, impressive. Next is Andreas Colette, Cam's polar opposite and vowed enemy at this point. Just low scoring all year, nearly made it into the playoffs, even on a baby easy schedule. But sometimes you got to ride the highs and hit the lows as hard as you can. So next is Cleo Weston. She was pretty similar to Andreas, constantly at the bottom of scoring points, especially through the first 8 weeks of the season, but really picked it up when a lot of that younger talent started performing. A lot of rookies, a lot of second year players. Snuck into the playoffs behind a pretty late surge. Very, very strong performances put in by Cleo, including a blowout of Ryan in week 10. Yeah. But a lot of boom and bust GM moves paid off for Cleo, which could be perceived as lucky, but sometimes you got to throw a bone. Sometimes you just gotta go be a dog and get it. So our winner, Henry Gonzalez, Henry Rock Bottom Heroes himself, had a solid team and normally wouldn't be on here. However, this man neglected his roster for like 4 weeks in the middle of the season and managed to be just fine. Henry is going to manage to get on this list as the luckiest owner. 9-5 though, still a very, very successful season. And overall, I wouldn't say anyone was extremely lucky this year like we've had in years past. I would say everyone on this list was pretty deserving of the success that they saw. Next up, we have our worst GM award, our Dave Gettleman Worst General Manager. We have a lot of friendly faces on this one too that we've seen before. We're going to see Mitch Walsmith, who looked on the right track at the start of the year, but every player that Mitch picked up or touched got injured. Everything he touched died, pretty much. He's got the poison touch, and a lot of Mitchisms occurred just throughout the year. A repeat offender for being a nominee is just not a good look for the man. Next up is myself. Sad to say it. There's a lot of questionable GM moves that were made on the year, led to a lot of top players being traded or dropped, and just weren't given the opportunity to perform as they should. But yeah, led to trading players at the deadline for draft stock. Yeah. Next is Logan Weston. Looked like a GM of the year candidate, not a worse GM. Through 7 weeks, it's 6-1. Just could not recover though once everything started to spiral. 9 straight losses to be bumped out of the playoffs. And starting about his 5th loss, it became a joke each week, and it just never got better for the man. And it's very, very disheartening to see something like that. But also, I have notes in here of his 3 QB strategy. When all 3 QBs were in the top 10 for scoring, that was pretty bizarre. Not playing a defense in several weeks cost him a few wins. So there was definitely some moves that could have been made there that weren't. Henry Gonzalez is on here. He didn't receive any votes. He was just on here as a formality for roster neglection. Um, so that's why he made this list. But our winner, going back to back once again, is Ziggy Page, 2 in a row for Dave Gettleman Awards. Just consistently at the bottom. And there wasn't a whole lot of redeeming management moves that were made on the year. Uh, so Ziggy's going to find himself down here taking a huge percentage of the vote, too, um, to win his second Dave Gettleman Award. Trash Talk Trojan. These are the noted trash talkers throughout the season. Some pretty active in chat. We're going to go through them. Our first is Henry Gonzalez. He's better than you, and he knows it. And he kind of lights up the chat whenever he wants to, whenever he's feeling frisky. Next, we got Ryan Williams. Occasionally just lets it loose in chat. It's pretty funny to see him go off. It's about once every 2 weeks you'll hear him say anything, but it's usually some fire towards the smoke. But yeah, he gets fired up in the chat when it matters, and it's pretty fun to see. Next up is myself. I'm a professional victim. No one is safe from my complaining, and that often turns into some shit talk for sure. Cam made this list because of some banter that he had throughout the year, especially with AK. It's always fun to see. A little more lighthearted than some of the other things that get said in chat. Mitch makes this list as well. He was our winner last year. He's worse than you, and he knows it, unlike Henry, where he's better than you. He's a regular shit talker, and he takes pride in it. He knows where he stands, and if he's doing something better than you, he loves to get after it. But our winner is Alex Kanasog. Unlike Henry and Mitch, he is worse than you, and he doesn't know it, is the best way I can put it. I personally have a love-hate relationship with the man, especially in fantasy. It's your award this year. He turns his pain into others' torture. He loves taking a joke about his team and making your day ruined by it. So congratulations, AK. This is one of my personal favorite awards. And you took it this year from Mitch. Next up is the Cry About It Award, this year being dubbed the Mike Bonner Cry About It Award. Our first nominee is myself. Once again, constant victim mentality, but I also back it up with stats, and the people hate to see it. But 100%, when things aren't going my way, you're hearing it in the chat. Next is Cam Wheeler. I'm going to quote AK on this. If you want to win, just outscore the opponent, was his advice to Cam. Cam constantly got blue balled, though, by the fantasy gods and by the top scorer of the week. His schedule was a brutal one, and he was deservingly a Cry About It Award nominee, but still is going to make the list here. Next, we got Eddie Morlock Hobson. His only vote was for himself. He lives in the Salt Flats, and years of losing, though, at this point, does that to a man. He's a champion in 2019, solid in 2020 and 2021, I believe, and then it's just been brutal 3 years for him. Our winner, though, is Mitch Walsmith, taking a giant share of that vote. Who's surprised? I'm not surprised. He won it last year, I believe. Ironically, everyone voted for themselves in this award. Eddie's only vote was himself. One of Cam's 2 votes was for himself. So at least the guys know it. We know where we stand in our bitching. So yeah, we're gonna move on to the best rivalry award. This usually goes to a joke, but some of the more traditional rivalries have been getting a lot of traction this year, and that's true this year. It was just a spread out vote. Our first nominee is Cam Wheeler versus God. Don't know what he did to anger the man, but he was not a happy camper this year, and Cam kind of felt that wrath. Next is the Collusion Bowl. Got a lot of traction this year and a new name from the Alex Bowl, turned to the Collusion Bowl. It's the bane of my existence every year. Always putting me through hell and getting questions about, can I do this? But what can I say? The people love it. It's a great rivalry. Next is the Madeline Bowl, Mitch versus Andreas, where we saw a fantastic blowout in week 11 from Mitch. This is just a chirper. They like to get at it in chat, especially Mitch. And that's why that ends up here on this list. Next is Spencer versus Andreas, the first one to ever do it. Had some big moments this year, had a couple instant classics. Very solid rivalry. It continues to make the list here, but it is not going to win this year. Eddie versus Henry, lost ground this year. Every year it's been steadily inching further and further towards winning that award. However, this year was a little bit out of the spotlight. Still a classic, though. Mitchell versus the IR. Unfortunately, the joke has been kind of run to the ground here, but Mitch was playing against the injury bug all year. Our winner was Logan versus the second half of the season, though. The man just can't escape it. I don't really know what it is. He can't beat these allegations. It's his second year in a row ending on some huge losing streak, and just traditionally he just does worse in the second half of the year. So he's gonna take the award this year. Upset of the year. This goes to just that game that kind of shocked the league a bit, or drastically changed the structure of the playoffs of the postseason. It almost didn't make the cut this year. Our first nominee is in week 6 when Andreas gave Jackson his second loss of the year and got to 3-3. At this point, Andreas started 0-3 and was putting in strong performances to get back to 500 here and put himself right in the mix for the playoffs. Our next nominee is in week 8 when Landon ends Logan's 6-game win streak to get to 4-4. Little did we know at the time this was the start of the downfall for Logan's season. Still a huge win for Landon to get over Logan. Our next nominee is in week 11 when Cleo blew out Ryan. Got to 6-5 and was a huge win to get Cleo into the playoffs. She really put her dukes up for that one. Unfortunately, she followed it up with 2 losses to Ryan and is looking like it's going to be another brutal loss this week. But for the structure of the playoffs, that win was massive, and it was a huge blowout too. I think 75 points split them. Our last nominee is week 14. When I eliminated Andreas from the playoffs in a win or go home situation for Andreas after Landon won. There's just a little bit of bad blood and fantasy between us, and that win felt very good. But our winner also occurred in week 11, like Cleo's blowout win. It was Mitch blowing out Andreas in the Madeline Bowl. This is what I was referring to when I was talking about Mitch's chirping in the chat. This loss effectively was the downward spiral start for Andreas, missing the playoffs. So, Mitch took out a sneaky win here. Kind of a shiner on his season for sure. We're getting into our last award now, most hated. This is my favorite award. Usually it's rigged. No one was safe this year. Everyone was a nominee. Unlike last year where I put out 4 options. 6 different owners received a single vote, but I'm not going to go all over all of them. What you need to know is that Mitch is going to make it 3 in a row, taking a huge share of the votes here. Props to him. He takes it like a champ, but he is going to win 3 in a row now for our most hated. And that is going to conclude the TGI Fantasy 2024 Awards ceremony. Thank you for tuning in, and good luck to everyone in the last bit of the playoffs here. As I'm recording this very late, it's currently middle of Sunday, and the seeds are being sown, and everything is really shaping up to see how we're going to end this final week. But good luck to all of you, and may you have better luck next season.